Hi guys, and this is going to be the second lesson of our Anthropocene introductory PowerPoint. We left off our last lesson talking about the increasing carbon concentrations in the atmosphere, and we discussed that photosynthesis is the only natural process that we have to take the carbon out of the atmosphere. Unfortunately, we as humans have been cutting down a lot of the trees that are currently the only solution to our increasing carbon problem. So one of the other effects of this Anthropocene epoch is that humans have been participating in deforestation for hundreds of years, but particularly since the Industrial Revolution, this has gotten pretty bad. Deforestation is happening all over the world, but one of the main spots that is the most affected by this is the tropical rainforest. So the tropical rainforest biome, and when I say the word biome, biome is it's kind of a classification for an area of our planet that has similar climate and weather patterns, similar plant life, similar animals, and so we classify these biomes based on those factors. Okay, so the tropical rainforest biome, that is being the most affected by the deforestation, is pretty major because it has a variety of plants and animals, which makes it an area of our planet that has the highest amount of biodiversity. Now, deforestation happens in a couple different methods. So in the picture you see some logging going on, where they physically go and they cut down all of the trees. Another way deforestation can happen is through land clearing fires. And these are not your natural wildfires. These are fires caused intentionally by humans to clear the land. Now, there's multiple reasons why humans feel the need to clear the land or to take down these trees. A lot of it is going to relate all back to human population. So the more humans we have on this planet, the more food we need to feed them. So therefore, even agriculture, because with agriculture you can't grow crops in areas that have a lot of trees. Okay, so what happens is that even though we are going to be planting plants in those fields, those plants don't make up for the trees that we originally took down, okay, in regards to at least carbon concentration in the atmosphere. So with agriculture, this happens with all crops, but one of the biggest offenders for deforestation is the palm oil companies. Okay, so what palm oil is, it's obviously oil that you get from different types of palm trees and palm plants, and palm oil is found in a lot of different materials and a lot of different foods. If you probably look around your house, you will probably find something with palm oil in it. Unfortunately, palm oil is found in the tropical rainforest biome, so there is a lot of deforestation happening there so that they can collect the palm oil. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, you can this is one of the topics that you can choose for your project that'll be coming up later this chapter. Okay, so palm oil, but this goes for all types of agriculture. Another reason why humans has turned to deforestation is that with an increase in population, there's an increase in urbanization, which is just basically the growth of cities. And so for these cities and the buildings and the factories and the roadways and the bridges and everything that goes along with a particular community, we see that we have to be able to have land to do that. And so one of the ways that they get this land is through deforestation. Okay, we take down the trees so we have the land to build on. Some of the trees, when they are not being cleared by land clearing fires, will be harvested for wood for building purposes, so building houses, building bridges, building furniture, okay? Or they can also be used for fuel purposes. Some of you might have a wood-burning stove or a wood-burning fuel pump at your house. One interesting fact that I kind of came across as I was doing my research is that deforestation, among other things, was actually a war tactic in Vietnam, which you might have known, but I did not know, so I figured I should share it with you. So Agent Orange, which you heard about probably in your world studies or American history class, Agent Orange was actually an herbicide. So it was sprayed along the land to kill off all of the plants and vegetation so that the United States Army could see the soldiers for Vietnam. It wasn't until a little bit later that they learned of all of the really negative health problems that Agent Orange causes. So a lot of people in the Vietnam area had birth defects or gave birth to children who had birth defects, and they also had multiple cancers and really other awful diseases as well from the chemicals in Agent Orange. A little history knowledge for you. All right, now deforestation is not only contributing to the rising carbon levels, okay? It's also contributing to soil erosion, which plays a big part in land maintenance, okay? And it is also playing a big part in habitat loss for multiple species. So as we cut down these trees, for whatever purpose we're cutting them down, we are taking away the habitats of the birds and the insects and the if we're in tropical rainforests, we've got monkeys, we've got lizards and amphibians and reptiles, and we're even plants, okay? This is all part of that habitat loss for those species, okay? Which is going to bring us right into speciation and extinction rates. So the first part we're going to look at is speciation, okay? Which we know from last chapter is the creation of new species. Now, the last chapter that we did together, we were talking about different selection pressures, okay? And those selection pressures would cause organisms to adapt. And so we talked about some isolations with the temporal and behavioral and geographical isolations. We also talked about animals and other organisms have to adapt based on things like genetic drift and mutations and migrations. So that whole part 3 of our evolution chapter really focused on what happens naturally, okay, without human contact. The thing is, humans have actually played a pretty big role in some of the speciation issues that we've seen. So humans have actually changed selection pressures, so only the species that can adapt to the environments that humans have created are able to survive. So, unlike natural selection, which says the strongest, the most fit, the best adapted, okay, for that particular area are going to survive and reproduce, this might not always be the case. So it's almost like instead of being the best that are able to reproduce, humans have altered it to the organisms that are able to coexist with what humans have created are able to survive and reproduce. Okay, so let's look at some examples here. One of the examples we actually talked about previously. So our peppered moth, we did the peppered moth online simulation lab, talked about how peppered moths actually changed their coloration to camouflage better with the polluted forests and the polluted trees that was first started in the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so there is an example of humans changing the way that animals have to live and have to adapt. Okay. Some other examples, so I know a lot of you, especially come fall, right around Thanksgiving time, go out and go hunting. I know a lot of you enjoy fishing. What we see is that humans, as we've hunted and fished, have actually changed the course of some species. Because typically when people go hunting or when they go fishing, they're not going to go hunting and fishing the smallest and the tiniest and the puniest little animals. No, they're going to go for the strongest, the biggest, even the rarest or most unusual looking animals. Okay, kind of like if you think about deer hunting. Are you going to go shoot the tiny little buck that has one antler missing? Probably not. You're going to wait and see if there's a larger buck that comes along. And so that's almost reversing natural selection, because natural selection says that the strongest and the most fittest will be able to reproduce and pass on their genes. When humans hunt, we're actually taking out the strongest of those organisms. Okay, so if we're hunting deer, okay, we would be taking out the largest males of that particular deer population. Okay, which changes things kind of significantly, because we're taking those genes away, and over time that can actually cause a species to adapt, perhaps even become even smaller or change because of that. Another example that I ran into as I was doing some research on this was in Canada. gray or silver foxes used to be very predominant. Okay, like 60% of the fox population used to have that silvery gray coloration to them. And then the other 40% were your like typical red foxes that you might see around here. However, because the people were drawn to those silvery gray coats of the fox, okay, those actually became more desired, and therefore they were hunted more than the red foxes. So at this time, seeing a silver or even gray fox is very uncommon, when it used to be pretty common, okay? Actually more common than seeing a red one. But what we notice is that as humans have hunted or fished with these animals, okay, we've actually caused them to change. Another example, so this doesn't just apply to like the animals that we see around here, it can also include the plants. So when people get landscaping done, a lot of times they will landscape with non-native plants, because non-native plants typically are prettier than your native plants. Okay, at least more aesthetically pleasing to most people. But when they are putting non-native plants in there, okay, these plants could even possibly be invasive to that area, meaning that they're going to take that area over and reduce the amount of native plants. Okay, so we see a change because of landscaping. Even humans who are trying to benefit wildlife, okay, whereby like feeding the birds during the winter, we actually have noticed a change in bird beak shapes similar to Darwin's finches. But the birds that we see around here, their beaks have changed slightly because they're used to eating that artificial seed over the winter, as opposed to the natural seeds that they would have to forage for in the woods during those cold months. Okay, so even when you're trying to benefit the environment, you're still causing a change. Okay, now causing birds to adapt beak shapes, that's not something that is detrimental, but it is something that could cause a species change, or even potentially a new species eventually being created. Okay, because remember, it doesn't happen overnight, it happens over several generations. Okay. So since we are still discovering new species to this day, it's really difficult to determine whether human activities are increasing or decreasing speciation, because even today, with all the technology that we have and all the research we've done, it is very difficult. We don't know how many species there are out there in the world. Okay, we are finding new species on a weekly or at least monthly basis. So if we have no idea how many there actually are, it's hard to determine whether we're increasing that number or decreasing that number, because we're still finding them. However, one thing that we do have more concrete evidence on is extinction rates. Okay, so extinction rates are much easier to track because we physically see these animals, we can physically see, keep track of them, and therefore that data is a little more concrete. Okay, so extinctions, first off, are not only caused by humans. Extinctions are actually natural phenomenon. And what we see is that humans, since the Anthropocene epoch has actually started, this rate has increased significantly. So species are actually becoming extinct 100 times faster than what they would without human impacts. Okay, so yes, extinctions happened without humans, but they are happening over 100 times faster with the impacts that we have had. Because of the extreme rate of extinction that is happening at this time, scientists are calling this time period the sixth mass extinction. In our geological timescale, there have been 5 other mass extinctions prior to this, but we haven't had one in a really long time. Okay, to put it into perspective, the last mass extinction, the 5th one, that was the extinction that wiped out the majority of the dinosaurs. Okay, so it's been a while, and it kind of puts into perspective of how big this problem actually is. Okay. Good. All right. Now, I notice, even if I talked really fast, okay, I'm going to be nearing the end of my 15-minute mark. I'm going to go ahead and make a really short clip for tomorrow, which will just conclude this PowerPoint up. And then I hope you guys are doing well. Okay, I will talk to you more tomorrow. Have a good night.